Okay. Dennis, let me just interject here. Guys, we're going over flat Earth again. Okay. From a Christian perspective, or from a biblical perspective, I should say. Last time we hit it with Dr. Hugh Ross from kind of a scientific perspective. And this time we're going to hit it from a biblical perspective. Mondo's here in particular because not only is he a pastor, and a public speaker, but he also, I wish it was in the background, he also heads up this, is it called Psalm 19?
The Psalm
Mondo?
19 project.
Psalm 19 project, where they've got telescopes and they've got all sorts of gear, and they have qualified people that can actually look into the sky, right? Look into space, look into all of those things, show you images. They're not from NASA. They're not from all these government agencies that you don't trust, right?
Photoshop.
Yeah, Photoshop. These are Christians, they're believers, and they are trying to explain and to show and declare the glory of God through his creation. And so on that note, Mondo, do you want to tell us a little bit about Psalm 19 and what you guys are doing with that?
Yeah, God provided some very well-to-do people who have a lot of resources, and I was just happened to talk to him one day randomly, and his wife has a telescope, and he's like, oh yeah, she's never used it, and I was like, oh. Well, okay. Well, if she ever wants to sell it, it was the exact one that I was looking at. I mean, it really was.
Wow.
And so he said, well, let me ask her. So anyways, he went and asked her, and he came back and he said, oh, she wants to keep it sentimental value. But hey, I want to send you, $15,000 to get your own.
Shut up.
And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Well, that'll work. And so, and then,
oh my goodness.
And then, well, it's even more amazing. So over the next few months, just kept talking, and finally he just said, well, what do you need? And he gave me a wish list. And so we ended up getting a 7-inch refractor. We have that same telescope that his wife had. We have one of those as well. And we have another, that's a Schmidt Cassegrain 11-inch scope. And then we also have an 85 millimeter refractor that is portable. So we have, of course, all the gear. It's on a high class, mount that tracks so perfectly. It's just amazing, all this stuff. And so we have it in an observatory where the roof rolls off. And
wow.
So if people go to psalm19project.com, they can go there and see how this all developed. They can also see videos of seeing the thing in motion and the roof coming off, and all of I put all of our pictures on there, high resolution pictures. People can get them, they can look at them, they can search them. It's all free. People can go there again, psalm19project.com. So, but one of the things that we wanted to do was, at the time, I had heard about flat Earth and stuff like that, and I was like, okay, well, it's interesting. And listen, let me just say this. I love conspiracy, man. I am conspiracy all the way. So trust me, I'm not some straight and narrow person. I really do. So
you're not paid for by NASA?
I'm not a NASA shill. I mean, NASA. I mean, NASA is a godless agency. Now, not everybody's demon possessed or occultic, but there are Christians that work there. But nevertheless, we know that as an agency, they don't promote God. They're evolutionary, et cetera, et cetera. So nowhere can anybody accuse me of defending NASA. But what I thought was interesting was that, not only to take pictures of the heavens, because God has created so many beautiful things, and to show that off, because most people don't get a chance to see it. But then I started hearing that people were like Hubble telescope, people were saying that's not real and other things, and all the pictures are fake. And I was like, what? And so one of the angles was simply to say, okay, well, Hubble's saying that NASA and Hubble, whatever, I mean, it's not just them, but the whole world is saying, hey, here's, for example, the Orion Nebula. People can go on our website and see it. And so I thought, well, I'll just go take a picture of it. So sure enough, I set it up. I tell it goes right there. I take a picture, and voila. And actually, people can go on there and see a comparison between the Hubble picture of the Orion Nebula and ours. And actually, many people like ours better, and which is amazing, because so the technology that we have today is absolutely astounding. Even as little as 5 years ago, people were doing astrophotography, but now the average person can get involved for relatively cheap. I mean, you could have a whole setup for under $1,000. It's amazing, and you can start taking pictures yourself.
Wow.
So this isn't just the elite or others that are trying to hide. And so that was one of our angles, was to say, first of all, one of the premises, or one of the assertions made by those in the flat Earth community is that there's nothing up there. There's nothing to see. All of it is fake CGI. And I thought, well, okay, well, we can. I'll put that to the test. And so we've been doing that. And again, people can go and see our pictures that we've done, and to check them out. All super high resolution. You can zoom in. It's just absolutely astounding. And so that was one angle that we wanted to do. The other thing we wanted to, again, just to show the glory of God. We wanted to challenge some of the what I would say the very unscientific methodology of many flat Earth. Not all. Again, we're speaking very lovingly. We're speaking very generally here, because I have friends that are believers in Jesus, love the Lord, but they're flat Earth people, and yet as I've shared them some of the pictures that we're doing, they don't know what to think. They don't know what to say about it. So that was one of the main reasons why we started the Psalm 19 project, to make it available to everybody, as well as to research other things. I mean, you have things like Tom Horn talking about Apophis, the asteroid, which is supposed to come hit the Earth at a certain period of time. And so we're able to track that. And that was one of our goals, stuff like that.
Wow. Dude, that's incredible. I love that you guys initiated this because you wanted to check out God's creation in like a more in-depth way. And along the way, because the flat Earth stuff, that's been it's been the past 5-6 years that it's really resurged, and what a perfect time for like a Christian organization, non-NASA shills, to put out, material, content, evidence, photo that can help Christians and non-Christians, because not everybody that believes in flat Earth is Christian, that, hey, but what about our stuff that we're putting out? What about our photos? What about our non-NASA associated material? And why don't you just go buy a telescope and do it yourself if you're really that into it, or if you're really that opposed to the idea of things being out there in space. But I have heard some people argue that there are devices inside of the telescopes that show you only what NASA wants you to see. You know what I mean?
I would like to discuss that too.
Okay. Listen, there's so many rabbit holes that we could go down with this thing, because in the research and in the weeds of this topic, it's almost like anything you bring up, there is a counter argument against it, even though there's no evidence, even though they can't prove it, even though there's always something that they'll bring up and kind of just put it out there. And you're like, well, how am I going to prove to you that there aren't, I guess, like screens or something in the telescope, some kind of technology that only shows me what NASA wants me to see? You know what I mean? It's so like,
it's bizarre. It's bizarre.
And it's very conspiratorial, where everything has to be, everything's a conspiracy. And I'm with you. I love me a good conspiracy, and I don't trust any of these government agencies as far as I could throw, this pen right here. But it doesn't mean that everything's a lie, and that everything's a cover up, and that everything's a conspiracy. And so I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I hope people that, that are, and listen, I don't think everybody that believes flat Earth is like dumb or unsaved or doesn't know their Bible. I don't believe that at all. I just think, and to be honest with you, like, I kind of respect them, because they're like, well, this is what the Bible says. Here, let me show you these verses, right? There's a firmament. It talks about ends of the earth. It talks about the circle of the earth that God sits on, and they're trying to be faithful, right, to the word. So if this is what it says, this is what we believe. But it can't, God's word isn't going to contradict nature. He made the nature, right? So if we're looking at something and it doesn't look like what the experts are telling us, maybe we're not understanding it properly. So let's do some research. Let's get into it. Let's look at what the Bible passages are. Again, you're also a pastor, so that's another great little badge on your lapel, to be able to interpret these things for us. So this was probably like 6 months ago. one of the viral videos was a debate between, do you remember their names? Was it John? What was it?
Is this the one with Dean Odell? And then
Dean Odell, and I think John Locke.
Yeah, another pastor.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I think his name was John Locke. And it was, at least in the Christian community, it kind of blew up because it was a 4-hour debate. Okay. And it did not end well. It ended with with arguing. It ended with mics being thrown, with people getting kicked out, with security coming up and stopping the whole thing. So when I watched that, I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
This is like
embarrassing.
How are Christians acting like this? Like, this is not okay. And that's when I started getting into looking into the flat earth stuff, because I'm like, is this really happening? Like, is this really what Christians are believing? And it was after that debate that like I really started looking into it and seeing that like, hey, there's a lot of Christians that are taking this seriously. So let's talk about it. Okay. And some people don't want to talk about it because they're kind of highbrow. They can't believe that there's people who think this way. Right. But there's a lot of people that are starting to think this way, you know? So one of the things that I wanted to do is actually pull up clips from the the debate. Okay. And we can go through some of those clips and get your perspective on the arguments, you know? And we're doing it in a loving way. We're not talking down to anybody. We're just dialoguing about the points that are brought up in that debate. Fair enough?
I'm judging them in my heart.
Shame.
Well, you know,
so, go ahead.
You know, let me say one thing, because I think for all of us, you know, if you die and you go stand before the Lord, which we all will, the first question he's not going to ask you is, did you believe the earth was round or sphere or flat? Okay.
Right.
This is not a salvation requirement as it relates to doctrine, you know. And so we'll say that right up front. Again, this is one of those areas of lovingly disagreement. However, I would say this, that on both sides, and I talk about this again at the Psalm19project.com. I've written 3 articles there, and again, very, very kind, very in depth, talking about the different aspects, not only of the Bible, but as it relates to the science part of it. And but the interesting thing is that I say in there, look, both sides, those that believe in a flat earth and those that don't, both feel that that salvation, not that salvation is required there, but the evangelism, I'll say it this way, that evangelism is affected by this. Because if you take a flat earth person, they're going to say, well, because of this mass conspiracy around the world of believing in a sphere, when the Bible clearly says that it's flat, therefore this lie that is out there is going to convince people, those that have come to believe that the earth is a sphere or a globe, will no longer be open-minded to believing what the Bible says, and therefore they'll never come to salvation. So their heart, at least for the most part, is at least what you see, given the complete benefit of the doubt, which is what Paul tells us to do in out of love in Romans 14, is that their heart is to win people to Jesus. And so I think, well, that's very admirable. That's again that's the point. Well, I'll just speak for myself. From my perspective, I think, well, I want to win people to Jesus too. And unfortunately, because the evidence is so overwhelming for a globe, when people come and make a claim that the earth is teaching a flat earth, those same people are never going to be open to the Bible, because now they've been taught that the Bible teaches a flat earth. And when the overwhelming evidence that you can see with your hands, etc., that we can take pictures of, is showing that it's not, they're not going to be open to the gospel either. So both of us are approaching it from an idea and an intent to see people come to salvation based on truth. But you said something correctly, is that, you know, I want to address, you know, a little bit of the science, you know, and the pictures and why that's important. But then also we you know, because we got time, we want to talk as well as about the hermeneutics. I mean, my background, my degree's in hermeneutics. I'm getting a PhD in hermeneutics. The most important thing that I feel to understand the Bible is, how do we interpret the Bible? And so when people make claims about the Bible says this, or Bible says that, we all love the Bible, but my attitude is, well, you're misunderstanding the Bible, or you're misinterpreting the Bible. And here's the reason: A, B, C, and D. And obviously, we know that the Bible is misinterpreted all the time. This is why we have so many cults. I mean, we know that's the case. That people. This is why we have so much false thinking. People say homosexuality is okay because what Paul wrote in Romans 1 really doesn't mean that, or 1 Corinthians 6. And we just say, no, you're misinterpreting it, the Bible and its context. And so therefore you're coming up with a false teaching. And so I want to say something. One last thing in this is that a misinterpretation of the Bible is not God's word. It's not representing God's word. I believe the true interpretation of the Bible is God's word. And so anybody that says, oh, well, Genesis 6:5 means this, and it's totally upside down, well, they're not communicating what the Bible is truly saying, and therefore it's inaccurate to say that's what God is saying. And so it takes work. We do know that the gospel is easy to see in the Bible. That's very clearly, Jesus loves me, right?
Yeah.
John 3:16, if you want to say it that way. But when we get into some of the deeper things of Scripture, we need to go deep in it, and God lays it out there. We also know that the original languages, I truly, this isn't a snob thing, but you can certainly get a very good doctrine based on English. But if you want to go super deep into the minutia of things, you cannot do it on English. You have got to look at the original languages, and preferably not just pulling out a Strong's Concordance. I mean, I'm talking about truly understanding Hebrew, Greek, the syntax, the way that the language works, the morphology of the language, of the scripts, everything else. I mean, I'm talking at the deep levels, okay? Not just, again, we can get the gospel in English, there's no problem there. But what happens is so many times people just say, well, they might be King James only. I only believe the King James. So you have that whole issue. And you go, look, heck with the King James, heck with any of the modern. Let's just go straight to the Hebrew. Now, again, not everybody can do that, but that's really the goal. So in some of these, we're going to get into some of the nitty gritty here. We're going to talk about genre and other things, but I think it would be helpful, I think, in the beginning to lay a little bit of the foundation for what we've done in the Psalm 19 project with the pictures, because some people will ask the question, well, what does taking a picture of that reveal about the earth? That's a fair question, and we have an answer for it.
That's awesome. Let's do it. Do you have some that you want to pull up?
Can you pull up things?
You can even pull up things, I think, or does it have to be me?
Well,
do you have anything at the bottom that says share?
It says share screen. Oh,
you want to try that?
Let's try this. Let me go to. All right. Select. Let me cancel this for a moment. Let me open this up because this is pretty fun. Let me just go to psalm19project.com.
Great.
And then
Let's do it.
People can see what we're doing here. And
while you do that, let me share a story on the topic of everybody's using the Bible to make their arguments. You can make the Bible say anything you want. There's other religions that use Bible verses, right?
Yep.
I remember reading, this was years ago, and it's really sad. There was a guy that was, I forget what country he was in, but he was like defiling his daughter for years, and it just went morbid, but it makes a point. And after a certain time, she runs away, goes to the police, tells them what's happening. He gets arrested. He goes before the judge, and the judge is like, how could you do this to your daughter? Right? He's like, well, the Bible says I can. Yep. And the judge was like, show me in the Bible where it says that so I could rip those pages out. And he quotes the verse, I forget where it is, some Old Testament thing where it's like, nobody plants a vineyard and doesn't reap of its fruits. Something along those lines, right?
Yep. And
that's what he took to mean, justification for what he was doing. So just because people quote Bible verses to you doesn't mean that that's what the Bible meant to say. That's what God meant to say through his word, right?
Absolutely.
So again, I'm not putting those, I'm not putting people that believe flat earth in the same context or in the same boat as that dude. I'm just making the argument that you can make the Bible say anything you want. Do you got it working there, Mondo?
All right, let me see. Chrome tab. Oh, there it is. Pull it up and let's share. So what you see here is, again, all this is at psalm19project.com. This was our original setup. And here you can see the white one is a 6-inch refractor. I don't need to get all the details, but this is our observatory. And then we ended up upgrading to this 7-inch refractor. And then up here on the on the top of that is this Schmidt-Cassegrain scope. So this is, you can see this is serious stuff. We're not messing around, and the equipment that we have is just phenomenal. This mount over here again tracks, just so people understand that I tell it to go somewhere, and it goes to that specific target, and then it'll track it all night long with absolute precision, so that when I focus the telescope, the camera on that in a very, very small way, I mean, you're talking, these are arc seconds, super, super small movements. It'll keep it in the center of the field of view perfectly all night long. And so that's the key. And so when we think about this as well, just what we said earlier, for those that make the claim that inside of these telescopes are little computers showing you what NASA wants, people actually build their own telescopes at home. It's really simple. You build a mirror, you build a mirror, and you have another secondary mirror, and then boom, you can see yourself. So that idea that there's a computer in there, that's just, I'm not being mean here, but people, please, it borders on a little bit of delusionalness, because
I agree.
It's again, that's not meant to be mean. It just does not reflect reality. And so I think if people got a little bit more understanding, again, I'm a conspiracy guy, but that's going way too far. And so as we go down, here's some videos just talking about how we make the videos. This is our other little scope that we have, which is what you guys saw earlier. There's looking down on the observatory itself with the roof rolling. So this is the first picture. So right here, if you guys can see this, I'll open this up.
Nice, there it is.
Oh my!
Dude, that's incredible. What is that?
This is the Orion Nebula. This is seriously this was a 2-hour exposure. So what we do is it tracks along, right? I put the target in there, it tracks it perfectly, and then I'll do like a 5-minute exposure, which means the camera opens it up. The camera basically it's taking a 5-minute exposure, and then it'll stop, and then it'll start again for another 5 minutes, and then because many of these things are very dim, I'll take 200 or 300 of these and then stack them together, and it brings out the brightness. But you can see even here that this is absolutely insane with its quality.
That's beautiful.
And so look, here's I won't go into all these things but people can see this. Again, here's a triangle that we took. These are another couple galaxies. I mean, just, you could see this. These are some of the early ones too, when I was just figuring out
those are entire galaxies.
This one here, you see on the bottom. Do you see my cursor at all?
Yeah.
Okay. This is M81 and M82. This is an entire galaxy, but they're bunched together. This is up near the Big Dipper, and you can see it again here. This is the triangle. And this is another galaxy near Andromeda. Just absolutely and phenomenal. You're talking, 100 billion stars in here that you can each look at these. So a couple little, these are nebula. These are just very hot gas. This is hydrogen gas. It's very well known. You can study this through spectroscopy, and you can see this very specific wavelengths. This is another fun one. This is the Messier cluster. You're talking 300,000 stars in this globular cluster.
Dude, it's so cool.
It's just so, again, this was a 6-hour image that we took, and these are out there. These aren't fake. You can see the beautiful colors, the blues, the oranges, the yellows. I didn't add anything. Listen, I'm not a CGI guy at all, and this is with the color camera. I took the picture, and so what we do is when you take pictures like this, there's noise, there's other electrical interference, there's heat interference, and there's other things like that. So when you do put it in the software, all you're doing is kind of taking away the things that are getting in the way. But I'm not adding anything here. These are all rich. It's beautiful. There's another one.
Because that is one of the complaints.
Yes,
is that they're using software to compile these photos. But I think what you're saying is you're not making the image. What you're doing is removing things out of the way to get a crystal clear image of what is there.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
We're absolutely not adding a single thing. And there's a whole bunch of other complicated ways of where you can take pictures, a broadband versus narrowband, and other filters like that. But what I've been doing is I take all of our pictures in broadband, which is a single shot. They call it a one-shot color. And so these are the colors that are proportional to what it's real life. Other people can take, they might do a narrowband where they maybe do 10 hours of hydrogen, which brings up more of the red, and then maybe they do 2 hours of oxygen or sulfur, which brings in the blues. I don't do that because that's a little bit more creative. It's not that the things are there, but they're just selectively adding, I want to add a little bit more blue. Well, I've chosen not to do that for that exact reason. People are going to criticize. So these are 100% color, one-shot color.
Good call.
So look at this. This is the Dumbbell Nebula. I didn't add any color to this. This is the way that it looks.
Dude, that's incredible.
That's just gas.
It's gas. So you can see right here in the middle. This is a star that has exploded, and this is ultimately you would see this as a sphere where the gas is flowing outwards like that. We're only seeing one side of it two-dimensionally. But if you zoom in on some of these, again, people can download these and zoom in. The resolution is incredible. You could see definitely some 3D effects on these. So just remember that. Here's another one that is just interesting. It's just this is called the Elephant Nebula because this over here on the side is looking like an elephant's trunk. And so people just name the name. Down here you have these dark nebula, which is just blacking out, absorbing all of the heat so that it doesn't reflect or emit any light at all. It's just it's pretty stunning. Here's another galaxy. This is M51. Again, I'm not. I didn't create anything here. This is I just took the picture.
So cool!
Isn't that amazing?
This is incredible.
It's absolutely stunning. And this is look. Some people have been doing this for 10, 20 years. I've been doing this for 2 years. And so this is what's available to anybody that is can go and get the equipment. So here's a picture that we have from a very special solar filter. This is a picture of our sun.
Really?
And I've never seen anything.
No way.
You could see the individual.
What are the black spots?
These are sunspots. Yep.
Oh.
This is just recently. I don't know if you guys got to see the Northern Lights.
Mm-hmm.
I got to see them down here all the way to Oklahoma. But these sunspots, there's a huge sunspot right now. Again, anybody can confirm this. Okay, this is a picture that we took. Huge sunspot that's like 17 Earths wide. And it caused this huge X flare, which again, the scientists were able to say, hey, by the way, this is traveling at 2 million miles an hour. It's going to be here within 48 hours because the sun is 93 million miles away. And you know what happened? It came.
Is it exactly that?
It happened exactly. And so people were out taking pictures, and you can see again, if people don't want to trust SOHO, which is NASA's satellite looking at the sun, looking at the sunspots, then go out and get your own telescope with a filter. You can see the sunspots yourself.
Right.
This is why, and over here on the left, you can see these prominences that are launching off the sun's surface. These are a couple Earths wide. It's just absolutely amazing what we can do. So here's.
Dude, there's so much happening out there.
Yes.
And we're just like worried about the dumbest stuff in the literally the dumbest stuff in the universe. Yeah. Is what we're worried about and getting like worked up about. But look what's going on out there, you know? And we're just on we're just on this like ball. And
this is real.
And we're just floating in space. And this is where God showed up. And this is where he did his work. And these are the people he saved. I hear this argument a lot where it's like, oh, flat earth with the dome, that glorifies God the most because he's most concerned about the earth and his planet and the people on this planet. I agree with you. But this shows his creativity, his glory, his majesty, so much more than just we're a snow globe and there's water above.
Well, and not only that, but if we go back, like, for example, so here, the question that those in the flat earth community often have a difficult time answering is, so here we are showing these nebulae, we're showing these globular clusters, we're showing galaxies, and the question is, what are they? And oftentimes, and there's, as you know, there's inconsistency. There's no unified flat Earth doctrine at times. That's because that's just the way it rolls. But some of them, well, these are just points of light on the stuck on the dome, kind of like a sticker would be. But the fact of the matter is, so here you look at this and you go, oh, well, what is this? Well, this is the field of view. And this was a very, very wide field of view, okay? And I spent how many hours on? How was it? 16 hours on this one, okay? So my goal And I'll show you in a minute. My goal was this little thing in the middle. It's called Stephan's Quintet. And the reason why I took a picture of this one is because the James Webb telescope, space telescope, had just taken a picture of it. I was like, oh, dude, I want to get my own picture of that. Okay. So based on this very wide field of view, I encourage people, go to the website, download this picture, and then zoom in. I counted over 50 different galaxies in this one singular field view. Now look, I'll show you. If you zoom in on this, this is what it looks like.
Get out of here.
This is, now again, if you go compare this with James Webb, they're going to go, oh, that's all fake. Hey, look, I took this picture myself. This was from our own telescopes. It looks exactly, I mean, the James Webb, obviously, I believe it really is in space. It's taking pictures in the infrared. It's precision. It's a $10 billion scope. Our telescope is not. Okay. But let me show you this. So as I was looking around, this is what I was after. Well, then with this picture, you can see, what's this over here on the right? And as I started taking pictures, I could see it coming up. And I was like, what is that? Well, that's called the Deerlit group. And look, that's what popped up. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10. There's another 11 there. 12. There's at least 12 other galaxies right in this little small section.
Do they have their own sun?
So cool.
Well, each one of these galaxies has 100 billion suns themselves.
How do we know that? Like,
nice, Dennis.
You know, that's a huge one. Come on.
That is a great question.
We say,
Dennis, look at these pictures. There's stuff out there.
You got me. I'm drooling over here. But then when I hear 100 billion suns, I'm like, okay.
Okay, I do agree. Some of these numbers get like ridiculous, where it's like, come on, really? It's 100 billion stuff. But Dennis, look at this stuff.
I want to believe that.
Even if there's only 2 billion suns in there, you got me. Like, I believe you. Whatever. Look at that thing.
You're right. I'm looking.
You're telling me that's one of those glow in the dark stickers that you had in your room when you were a kid.
That's the question.
Just stuck on the dome. Come on, bro.
Dude, that is so cool.
So I was able to actually zoom in. Let me go back to this one a little bit because I can actually zoom in a little bit more.
Dude, so cool.
Okay.
I want to go there.
Okay, so I'll answer that question about how we got that number. Okay, but so here's one of these nebula, and
God, these are like some of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life.
It's incredible.
Is it? Look at the color. I didn't add these colors.
It's incredible.
The blues, the reds, the oranges.
Are those clouds, Mondo, or is that like in the space? Like that's in.
These are dust clouds. These aren't clouds like in the atmosphere. These are dust clouds.
Okay.
That are. These are all. There's different kind of nebulae, right? There's some that are called reflection nebulae, which is reflecting off of maybe a star that's nearby, and the other one we saw, the Orion, was one of those. But also you have emission nebulae, which are that these things are very hot, and it's ionizing the gas and causing it to glow. So this is very normal. This is very typical of what you find out there. And so here, look at this one. This is, isn't this just cool? This is the Crab Nebula.
Dude, you know what this reminds me of? When I watch like nature shows of like underwater stuff on Netflix, and there's all these weird looking creatures underwater that you're like, oh my God, that thing's real? Why does that exist?
Yeah.
That's what I think of when I see this stuff. There's an entire other world out there, and there's things that exist that you're like, why is that there? But it is.
And you know why it's there? It's there, Revelation 4, it's there for God's glory. It's there for him. He created it for him. And so this is what we'd say, as we know, in most of human history, okay, whether you're 6,000 or a million years, I don't care. It doesn't matter. That's a whole different topic. But let's just say that on the young side, you're 6,000 years. Okay.
Oh, for creation.
For creation. Okay. Most of the things that are in the ocean were never, ever seen by anybody.
Exactly.
Because nobody ever explored. Most of the things for all of the human history like this in the sky and the heavens were never seen because we didn't have telescopes. So why were they created? Well, they were created for God's glory, and he saw them and the angels saw them, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, right now, we live in an age where we get to explore through through electron microscopes all the way down to the smallest level, and to be amazed at God's creativity. We get to look in the heavens. We get to look in the ocean. I mean, this is just glimpses. I'll show you some other things. Okay, this.
It just gets better and better.
Yeah, dude, this is the Andromeda Galaxy.
I just want to look at all these pictures.
Can we like forget flat Earth? I just want to talk about this. This is incredible.
You win.
So here. So what happened? Let me say this. So this is. I'll bring it back a notch. This is Andromeda. You can see this with your naked eye, if you know where to look. Now, when you look at it with your eye, it looks like a little fuzzy patch. You put a telescope on it, and you're like, oh, wow, it's getting some structure. You put a camera on it, and this was 13 hours worth. This is what you get. I added no color here. The blues. Wow. What do we know about blue? Well, when you're in chemistry class, what do you know about blue? Blue is hot. It's a hot flame. It's a lot hotter than the orange flame or the yellow flame. And so in the same way, there's a consistency here that with these blue colors, if you look in here, right here, you see some reds that are these other like hydrogen-rich areas that are less hot than these.
There's a really bright red spot.
Yeah.
To your right.
Over here. Bit. Yep. And here too.
Those.
Yep. Those are hydrogen spots. In the first picture that I showed you, which I'm gonna bring it back up.
So cool.
Okay, I'll bring it back up. This one. This red is all hydrogen. There's a star here that's ionizing all this gas and causing it to glow.
That is.
Dude, I kind of just want to become a space. What do you call it?
Astrophotographer.
Okay, I kind of just want to know what's going on out there the whole time.
Isn't this incredible?
I think I'm obsessed.
So let's we're gonna keep going here for a second because we're going somewhere with this.
I'm gonna quit my job tomorrow.
So let me see. Okay, so this is another one. This is the Orion one that I just showed you, but this one I took a little wider field and I took 4 hours. And so if you look over here, look at look at those colors.
It's like a Marvel movie.
Yeah. I didn't add a single color to this. This is the way it is.
Dude, that's amazing.
Oh, take me, Jesus.
Okay, so this one's kind of fun.
Wow.
This is called the Witch Nebula, and not for any reason, just looks like a witch's head, doesn't it?
Yeah. With the really big chin.
Yeah, with the big, here's the chin, here's the nose, there's the lips. So we're not saying anything, but the great thing is, look at the colors here. Most of the time, you don't get these colors here, but I spent a lot of time on this one. You can see here these little. It's just the way that it glows. It's absolutely amazing.
And when you say you spent a lot of time, so there's not accusation saying you made that. You just mean like exposure?
Correct. So these things. So in the heavens, as we know, even Paul says this in 1 Corinthians 15. There's different glories. There's different brightness levels of stars. It's very obvious. Anybody can see that on a night. Some stars are brighter than others. So some objects are dimmer than others. So if they're extra dim, then I need to spend extra time collecting the photons in order to bring out the riches. So like like this one up here. So this one here was, let's see, what did I say? I did 20 hours on this one right here. But this one here, this is 4. Why? Because this thing is super bright. You can actually see this with the naked eye to some degree. So that's the key. So when we're looking at these, here's another this is the Pleiades.
Whoa, dude, that one looks like a little alien.
Doesn't it look cool?
Do you see it? Yeah.
like sitting cross-legged or something. What why'd you stop at 4, for example? Why didn't you go to 20 on that other one?
I could have, but what happens is it, like if you take a picture of the moon, it'll blow it out. And even with the
like
DS
overexposure.
Yep, overexposure, oversaturated.
Dennis, it's like a picture. It's like a picture with your camera, man. You know, you're trying to capture the light, and you want to get it to where it's just right, showing it properly.
So this is the one I just finished like 2 weeks ago. Okay, you're like, yeah, that looks kind of neat. Well, then if we zoom in on it, okay, this is called the Sombrero Galaxy, and you're like, okay, but let me go down to this. Look,
that's cultural appropriation.
Hey, I'm Mexican. I can do it.
Oh, yes. We're in.
Yep, me llamo Mondo Gonzales. I got it.
Dang.
This is the Sombrero Galaxy. Just
so
amazing, stunning, beautiful. So I want to show you something else really quick, just since because I did this in the other article that I did, and people will know where we're going with this. So this is my second article, but look at this image. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Hubble telescope is on the left. This is the Orion Nebula, and ours is on the right.
Wow.
Now, ours
kind of like yours better.
Some people say they like ours better.
That's how I feel.
These are the same nebulas or whatnot?
This is exactly the same image. So you can see here this little like ball.
Yeah.
There's the ball there. There's a little bit more colors. This is from Hubble. You can see the outline here and the outline there. Mine goes up here. The gases are the same. There's the rich, what I call chocolatey. Look at this thing so this is exactly the same. But I don't know what they did. Again, their Hubble telescope is out in space. Ours is not. But so
that's a good point.
Ours is going to be limited by atmospheric disturbance and other things.
Right.
But here's the point. People say, Hubble's fake. Look at that. It's a fake picture. The one on the right, you can tell it's the same object.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, and so that was what led me to start. This is one of the first objects I took because people were saying Hubble's fake. And I said, hey guys, I don't know what to tell you. When I take a picture, this is what I get.
Yeah.
So this idea that it's completely fake is just a little bit unfortunate. So let me say something else. Okay. So this is all on the objects. So this is a picture. People can go online. This is one of the original photographs taken in the 1890s of the Triangulum Galaxy, which I took a picture of. So you can see 1890s. There was no NASA in 1890. Now, this is relatively horrible. But
how did they do it?
They took it on silver. Remember how they would take silver and these photographic plates? I mean, that began in the 1850s. So maybe even earlier, 1840s, 1830s, photographic plates is how they used to take images. Wow. So, but you can go on and in this particular, you can get this online. This is it's free. Robert Isaacs, you can get his book. And so look, let me see if I can pull this up. You can see this. Here's his picture of Andromeda in 1890, and here's ours.
How did they zoom in though? Like, or is it just exposure?
So here, what it is on a telescope is called focal length. So if you have a very long focal length, think of like when you're watching some of the, you can go out and get a DSLR camera, and it comes with usually an 18 to 50 zoom, right? 18 to 50 millimeters. Okay, that's your focal length. But then when you watch a football game, you see these people down on the field, and they have like a stand with their DSLR, and they have this thing that's like 4 feet long. Mm-hmm. That's focal length. So when you look at think about it. Let me go back to this for a minute. This is very helpful to set the stage for our discussion because, so if we go back to this one, look at that. Look at that focal length. Yeah. Now, if I had that, see this little red thing here?
Yeah.
That's the camera. So if
oh wow,
that's the camera right here. I can zoom in on that. There we go. This is it. So when you think about the camera being here, this is our autofocuser. But think about having that on the end of like a DSLR down on the near the football field.
Yeah.
When you have a long focal length like that, it automatically, I don't want to say zooms in, but it narrows in the field of view really, really tight. And so if you have, that's why in some of the pictures that I showed you, the field of view, like let me show you this
and they
one.
were able to do that in 1890?
Yes, because they had these telescopes. Oh my gosh. Some of them.
Their telescope's been around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Since the 1600s. Some of these were 20 feet long. So if you look at mine, that one's like 6 feet. So imagine a 20-footer. And so this is the field of view that I get right now. But again, if I want to zoom in, if I want to get let me not zoom in. That's a bad way. If I want to get a better field of view, you know what I do is, let me go back up. I will use this one. This one here. The
grenade launcher.
The grenade launcher. This one actually has the equivalent of 3 times the length of this one. Because
really,
the light comes in, it bends it back here to this, and then bends it back down to the camera, which normally is over here is now. I was doing some visual. So that's how you get these long lengths. So okay, so here we are, right? Let's I'll bring it back. I'll release the I'll stop sharing. Let's see.
Dude, I could just do this all day.
Yeah, this is just incredible. I'm gonna watch this before I go to bed tonight.
So let's just say we haven't said anything about anything of the flat Earth yet.
Right.
But what we have sought to address is the fact that claims that all of these things up in the sky are lies, are not real. I had one gal. You know what? Actually, I'm going to share again. If it's okay.
Take it.
If it's okay, because I want to show you something. These are all things that I have on these pages. I made these things for people to look at, and so if we come down, this is the expanse, the firmament. I wrote a whole thing on what that is, but let's see here. So this particular image here, this is a survey of where they stitched together, like all the pictures I just took. So all of the different telescopes out there at all the different places around the world, everybody's photographing the skies. They're taking pictures. You can see that this is the Milky Way galaxy. Okay, anybody can take a picture. Anybody can go in a dark sky. But what they did is they stitched together 130 degrees worth of images from all over the place, and you can actually go here, and there's over 3.3 billion objects in this. Billion with a B.
Yeah.
So that being the case, goes back to the question, well, how do we know there's 100 billion?
Yeah.
Because when we look at our own galaxy, the Gaia spacecraft has basically taken pictures and photographed and calculated and mapped out over 1.5 billion stars. So when you look at this, and how do I know that? Well, I had to download 30 gigs worth of data in order to get the telescope to line it up, because what happens is
that's where NASA gets you when you download their 30 gigs worth of data.
That's where they do it. But you know what's interesting about it is you think, okay, that's a fair question, but what it's not doing is when I'm going out to orient the scope, it's called making a star map. So it's zooming over here, it's zooming over there, and then it goes to 80 different points, and then it's taking a picture, and then it's going, oh, well, we have a picture of the entire heavens. Now we know exactly where you're at. So when I tell it to go here, it goes directly there. It's all mapped out. So you think, okay, well, NASA's got me. Well, the fact of the matter is, even if I take off the camera, I can still look through it and go, oh, that's Andromeda. That's that. I can look at it with my own eyes.
Without any like technology between you and the okay.
No cameras, just me with my eyeball through a mirror looking through the telescope. So again, going back, all that is to say that when you look at some of this stuff, let me bring up. Can I bring up one more thing, and then
of course,
because I think this will be important, because one of the things that always comes up in my mind is the idea of, okay, we're looking at these objects, but it's all fake. You're not going to be there. It's nothing to see. It's all fantasy. Okay, so this is what this is.
Real quick. Hey, Dennis, do you see it like you did before, or is it one of the small screens again?
If you move it around on your.
So it's just me, right?
Yeah, it's just you.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Go ahead,
so
Mondo,
okay. So what this is, I'll make it big. All right. So a couple of years ago, those in the non-flat Earth model, which is most of the world, they made a prediction that there was a comet that was coming, and the comet was going to be. They were calculating the projections or the orbit of it, the trajectories, and they said, "Hey, this is what it's going to look like." You could see the dates here. You know, July all the way through, all the way to December over here, and then you could see that it was well in advance of what they said would happen. And they said, if you go, you can see up here. Here's the Big Dipper. This is Boots, Arcturus. I mean, you can see all Leo. I mean, you see all of the constellations here. This is getting over near Cepheus, near the basically near the north, in the north side, near Polaris. Okay. So when you look at this, you say, okay, well, what do we do here? Well, what I'm saying is that there was a prediction that was made. So I went out in my front yard and I was like, I didn't have a mount. I didn't have any computers. It was me and a pair of binoculars. I was like, you know what? I'm going to find this comet because according to the predictions that they made 12 to 14 months ago, according to the non-flat Earth model, this is where the comet's going to be. I thought, you know what? This will be a fun test. So I went out there. I had my big 20 by 80 binoculars on a stand, and they said it was going to be. You can see these are all dates. These are very specific of where it's going to be in the constellation. So I know the constellations. I scan up there with my binoculars. Boom! There's the comet. So what does that prove? Well, what it proves to me is, regardless of any of the other conversations, somebody is able to predict something that is 100% accurate. Now, what I said in my article, not being mean, was simply to say, hey, look, I'll get rid of this. I'll come back and is those in the flat Earth community, if they want to be taken serious, they need to start doing some original science, experiments. It's anybody can quote the Bible. Joseph Smith quoted the Bible and he started Mormonism. Anybody can quote the Bible. You mentioned the guy quoting the Bible and he's raping his daughter. Okay, anybody can quote the Bible. But what you said in the beginning is so important. God tells us, look at the heavens, look at the heavens. He told Abraham, look at the sky. He's encouraging to tell us that the creation itself in Romans chapter 1 is enough to condemn somebody. They are without excuse. That's pretty serious that God uses his creation, the availability of his creation, to prove his existence and his glory enough that it condemns somebody to be without excuse. So for those, again, in the flat Earth community, what I say is, okay, in your model, predict, number one, discover a comet, and then give me the orbital trajectory 18 months from now. That's not being snotty. I'm simply saying your model does not work. It does not connect me with reality. Because, look, the Bible can be misunderstood, it can be misinterpreted. But what I can see with my own eyeballs is looking through my binoculars up at the sky. That is undeniable.
That's funny, Mondo, that you use the words "what I see with my own eyes," is because while researching this and looking up all the videos and stuff online, I don't have a telescope and I can't do what you did. So I'm just Googling. I'm just YouTubing flat Earth versus round sphere, whatever videos, right? But over and over and over again, they keep saying they'll show something here on Earth. It's never any space stuff, just FYI.
Yep.
Okay. It's just, oh, look at the horizon. Oh, look at me, I'm zooming in further. I thought the horizon's there. How did that object come back into focus, right? It's things that they'll say, well, my eyes are telling me something different than what the experts are telling me. So what are you going to trust? The experts or your own eyes, right? But what about all this stuff that you could see with your own eyes? That's up there. They're not stickers. They're not glow-in-the-dark stickers that God put on the firmament. That would be evil of God to put stickers on the firmament to deceive future mankind, right? Why would he do that? Why would he do that? As a Christian, you'd have to answer that question, right? And I'm being, facetious or hyperbolic that they're stickers. I'm joking. But one of the things that Hugh Ross said that I'll never forget was that the universe, like all of it, the whole thing, infinite universe, whatever word you want to use, everything out there, it all bears weight. There's a weight to it, okay? And the weight of the universe has to be perfect in order for the Earth to be the way it is.
Yes.
So when you're showing all of these images with billions, 100 billion, 50 billion, I don't know, billions of stars, trillions of stars, whatever, all of that has to be perfectly there for the Earth to exist the way it does, which is unbelievable. So when you want to talk about God, the other accusation is like, oh, in a heliocentric where the sun's the center of the universe? Okay, so in a heliocentric model, it takes away from the glory of God and his creation of mankind because it puts the sun at the center and the universe is infinite and the Big Bang and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, you're missing it.
Yep.
All of that has to be that way for the Earth to exist the way it does, and for us to be here on this planet. So it just glorifies God even more that he has to make it this way, or it had to exist this way for humanity to exist, so that he could come commune with us and hang out in the garden. And you know what I mean? It's even more glorifying to God.
That was beautiful, Ben.
But you nailed it, because I think when we look out, Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, right?
Yeah.
So when we look out so far, we can't see an edge of any of the universe. The farther you go out, again, when you're what has been interesting, and I talk about this in the first article I wrote, was Hubble decided, you know what, we're just going to focus on this dark spot of the sky for 10 days. There's nothing there.
10 days?
10 days, okay? So that's a lot of hours, right? So they spend 10 days and they come back in this little spot, thousands of galaxies. They're like, what? And then it's gotten, over the years, they've taken bigger and bigger. And now I have a graphic on there that you can see. But right now, according just to everywhere they look, if you just look longer, again, everything's dim. These things, and how does something become dim? Distance. That's very obvious. You go to a light, you measure a light of your neighbor, you walk a mile away, you can see it's getting dimmer. If you walk 2 miles, it's very specific as it relates to lights and dimness and how there's the ratio. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, when they look at these things, they go dim, dim, dim. They go, oh. And so now the estimates are that there's over 2 trillion galaxies. 2 trillion galaxies, each with 100 billion stars. Again, how do they know? Because what they're doing is they're looking at the Milky Way, and they're saying, and again, the guy mapping out the sky, there's like, well, based on what we're seeing here in this way, it looks like the Milky Way has about 200 billion stars. And if you look at Andromeda, which is the big one that we saw, that you can tell it's actually, according to the numbers, the Milky Way is about 100,000 light years across, based on their estimates. The Andromeda galaxy is like 250,000. They're saying, according to what they see in there, and then they can zoom in, they can use longer focal lengths and calculate it out. And they're like, that thing's got about 1 trillion stars just in that one galaxy. So if you do an average of 100 billion at the low end and 2 trillion, you start going, your mind is blown. And so that's the glory of God in seeing. Why did God do it? Because he could. And and you know what I tell people, Genesis 1:16, he created the sun and the moon, and he says, and the stars also. It's like, this is what I did on a Wednesday. What'd you do? Okay. Woo! He just, and anybody that's not blown away by that, I'm not threatened by that. I want to say, if you're a flat earther, you don't need to be threatened by that. Embrace it, man. Because look, we take pictures, and one of my coworkers, he had asked me, Mondo, how many of these objects are there? I said, billions. My entire life will be taking pictures of these and showing the beautiful colors and the riches. Again, not adding anything. This is what they are. So let me just say 2 more things, and then we can move on to the Bible. And that is, people will say, well, okay, I might not know what those things are. But that doesn't say anything about the earth. Okay, I agree. I would 100% agree with that. This is what I would say, though. However, I had one lady say to me that she accused me of being a NASA shill because of looking at the planets. She said the planets are just points of light. And I wrote her back. I said, have you ever looked through a telescope? Like a big telescope, 24 inches? She goes, well, I don't have the money. I go, you don't need the money. Fine. Go online, whatever town you're in. Let's say you're in Dallas. Dallas star groups, an astronomy group, Dallas Star Party, whatever. And you go there, they'll go to a dark site, and people love to share their toys. Come on, we're guys, right? We love to share their toys. And so sometimes you got to get on a ladder to stand up and look through some of these because they're 30 inches wide. I said, look, you don't need to buy anything. If you really are sincere and serious, and you're trying to convince me you're sincere about this information and about truth, go to a star party. You'll see Mars. You'll be able to see it with your eyeballs. You'll see the rings of Saturn. You'll see the polar ice cap on Mars, the planet Mars. It is not just a point of light. Wow. If somebody told you that, it's an absolute lie. I said, secondly, here's the beautiful thing. Jupiter, okay? Jupiter rotates in 9 hours and 45 minutes, okay? Rotates. What that means is, if you go in the wintertime, I get about 12 hours of night here. I can go out there and watch the red spot rotate in one night. What does that tell you?
It's not light.
It's a sphere. Not only is it not light, but it's a sphere. Because
good point.
We're seeing it rotate around, and we're watching the red spot come this way, go across, and then disappear because it's rotating. You see it turning. Secondly, you can see the moon go and orbit. It's in front. Sometimes it puts a shadow on it, which tells you it's 3D. It's not just a spot on the firmament. It's actually three-dimensional. It's turning, and you see the moon go around it, and you see the moon come out the other side behind it. So okay, what does that tell us? What does that tell us about the Earth? Nothing. But you know what it does tell me? It tells me that the other planets are spherical. They're three-dimensional.
Same model.
It's the same model. So I look at it and say, hey, look, guys, I can see this with my own eyeballs. Not only that, but you have it's called the libration of the moon. So people say, oh, the moon, we only see one side of it. That is only partially true. In fact, the moon in its orbit around the Earth and its fluctuation, actually, you can see, if you're looking at a normal flat disk, okay, if you just say the moon is a flat disk, there's no three-dimensional, which you can look through a telescope and see the mountains on it. You can see the craters. It's absolutely insane. But over a period of the lunar cycle, you can see up to 57% of the moon, because when it's pointing at you, it's actually going like this. And so because of its orbit around, you could see more than 50% is all you'd be able to. You could see up to 57%, which tells you that it's a sphere as well. And so the sun rotates every 28 days. Well, yes, when you look at the sun and the sunspots,
I didn't even know that.
Remember those black the black things?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now you can watch them. Every go to Soho or get a telescope. You don't trust NASA, fine. Get your own telescope. It's cheap. Go out of the thing, and you can watch the sun every day. Map it out. It'll go like this, and pretty soon it'll disappear behind it because the sun is rotating. So what do you have? You have all this evidence that the planets are spheres and rotate. The moon is a sphere and goes like this. The sun is absolutely a sphere and rotates. Not only that, but people say, well, okay, the constellations never move. That's not true. It's called proper motion. People can look up Bernard's star. Bernard's star is actually moving based on the background stars. Why? Because when they look at parallax of the star, they see that it's only 5 light years away, which makes great sense that it's closer. And because it's so close versus the other stars, which could be thousands and thousands of light years away, it's moving. These other stars are not moving. Well, they are moving, but they're so far away that you don't notice it. This other star is moving. And then, of course, you add in comets. So let me just say this, too.
Comets.
Last thing, okay, is
no, keep going. I don't care.
Okay, so
great.
If you stand 1 foot next to me, or let's say you're 3 feet next to me, and you go like this, and you move over a foot, I'm going to be like, and I'm looking at something, I go, oh, well, now maybe let's just say it this way. Maybe you're standing there and you're blocking the sun, so you're putting a shadow on me, right? And you're 3 feet away from me. Well, then you move a foot over. And now the sun, from the thing in the background now, because you're so close, I say, oh, man, the background, you move a big distance. I can tell that you moved based on the background information because you're closer to me. Now, if you go out 1,000 feet away and you're standing there and I'm like, I think I see you, and then you move a foot, am I going to really notice that you moved based on the background? Yeah. Not at all. What this tells us is anybody can do this experiment based on the distance. That is how you can tell things move. I can tell if you're up here and you move, like, oh, you moved, you must be close to me, because now you moved in contrast to your background. So when the star is moving in contrast to the background, you're like, that star must be closer to us. That makes perfect sense. You can do it on any. So when we look at, so we'll end the science part of it here, or what I would say is the practical facts. These aren't made up. There's no CGI.
Yeah.
These are facts that people can say. And what my point in all this is that the flat Earth model cannot explain any of this.
Right.
There's no explanation for stars moving, for comets. They have no way to do that.
Right.
They don't make any predictions about comets. One lady told me, okay, not only do we have telescopes being filled with computers, by NASA, and it's like people make their own telescopes. And before NASA, they were taking pictures in 1890. Okay, that's why I demonstrated that.
Right.
But another lady said, well, Mondo, the reason that NASA launches those asteroids and comets up on rockets. I said, well, what about Halley's Comet? Halley's Comet comes around every 75 years. It's well documented. And so, you know what, to her credit, she said, Mondo, I never thought about that. And, I kept reading that NASA launched the rockets and I believed it. And you just gave me a very good point. And, that's really dumb. And I was like, okay.
Thank God.
I appreciate that she was humble enough to realize.
Right.
So when we think about all this, this is just the scientific facts. We can multiply this by 1,000 or 1,000,000, because the idea that there's a conspiracy that every astrophotographer in the world is part of it, that every government in the world is part of in the bed of NASA. And they're all, we know that governments compete with one another. If they could show some things that NASA was false, they would. Okay, whatever, because you can't hide this. You can't trick everybody, because too many people have telescopes like myself. If NASA says, hey, Mondo, here's Apophis, I just go out there and I can look it up. Here's Andromeda. So we need to bring it back a notch into reality, and not just in this theoretical concepts or videos. It's always videos. I said, I don't care about video. Don't send me another video. Don't give me a video to watch. Okay? I won't give you a video to watch. Go go look at a telescope with your own eyeballs and watch Jupiter rotate.
Yeah.
Can I come over, Mondo?
Anytime. Yeah, absolutely.
Dennis will put a bunk in the observatory.
I'm quitting my job tomorrow, moving in.
Oh man, that was really good. I'm really happy.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I'm really happy you went through that. Because
now our stuff is gonna be so lame compared to that.
Well, I don't have any pictures.
Well, the glory of all that, like nothing else matters now. You watch that, you're like, okay, it just changes your perspective on things. You're like, well, this stuff doesn't even matter now.
It's incredible that God cares enough about this little planet and all of us with our little dumb drama and sin. This is what He cares about, even though there's all this other stuff happening out there where you're just like, what? Why does this matter?
Right.
But that was incredible. I haven't spent enough time actually looking at stuff like that to realize how big it is,
Yeah, I thought it was all fake, so I didn't want to look at it anymore.
Dude, up until 3 months ago, Dennis thought the Earth was flat, just so you know.
Yeah. I thought it was a big possibility. I wasn't sure 100%, but I thought it was a big possibility.
What did you think about pictures like that?
I thought they're all fake. I thought they were all fake. When I heard that the Earth, the blue ball, Photoshop thing.
That's a big one.
That's
a really big one.
Okay. And then not trusting NASA, right? I couldn't trust everything came out of NASA. My whole textbook, every textbook, my whole life was NASA.
Mondo, this stuff popped off. I think it got a resurgence a few years back, maybe 6-7 years ago. It started making the round. Social media blew this up, and especially during COVID, because not a lot of people trusted the government.
Yep.
And so
understandably,
if it was coming, I agree. Right. I totally agree. So if it was coming from one of the agencies, right, you're probably going to push back a little bit. And then it just took off. Oh, wow. Let there be light.
Yeah, sorry. The sun's not coming anymore. But no, you're exactly right. It took off. And look, I don't trust the government. But there is a limit that we need to have when we can look out. And I would say this, and I'll say this right now. I don't think the Bible teaches that the Earth is a globe. I don't think the Bible teaches that the Earth is flat. I don't think the Bible really speaks definitively at all on it as it relates to this.
I agree with you.
Yep.
That's a really good point, because I don't know if this is news to people. The Bible doesn't teach a lot of things, right? Mm-hmm. The Bible doesn't teach about cells. The Bible doesn't telescope. There's a lot of truths about this universe, this planet, our bodies, biology, and that. There's a lot of things that God did and made and created, right? We give him glory for them. Yep. All it says is that he made them. Yep. He doesn't have to go into details about them, right? Otherwise, even Jesus's words, it says like, these books can't even, all the books in the world like couldn't contain everything he did and said, right? Let alone the details about his creation and the intricacies of every single little thing. So it would be, but this is a good segue into our next, section. But the Bible does say things about the planet, about the sky, about possibly a dome. So it does say things about the creation, which people take, at face value, and trying to be honest to the text, say, well, this is what the Bible says, so this is what I'm going to believe. Yep. And so now, again, great segue. We can hop into the second portion of the discussion. And if you still don't believe, that there's space and you still think the earth is flat or there's a dome and it's all just stickers, then stick around for this part. Okay. But if you've already converted, let us know down in the comments that you believe in space. Thanks to Psalm 19. Dude, I love that you guys are doing that. Yeah. I love it. It was beautiful. Like
if I had a lot of money, I'd give you money, Mondo.
If you have a lot of money, give more money to Mondo.
Well, let me just say this. One of the things that we're doing is we have an observatory in Virginia. We have an observatory in Idaho. And
hey, that's my neck of the woods.
Where you guys? Well, you guys care? What do you say?
I'm in Boise.
You're in Boise. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. So just our buddies up in Potlatch. So you know where Potlatch is, near Moscow, right?
I have no idea where that is.
Oh, really?
Moscow. Okay.
It's just north of Moscow. And so he's got very dark skies there. And we also have another observatory that's in the works in Australia, which will give us access to the southern sky.
Yes.
So our goal is to document everything we can, as much as we can. Simply just, number one, again, even if all we do is take these pretty pictures, people would be like, dude, God is awesome. Look at his creativity. Look at his power. If that's all we do, then Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of the Lord and the skies above show forth his handiwork. That is enough to say, look at the power and the majesty of God. Please. Just like we'd watch a documentary on the animals in the ocean. They're amazing. They're beautiful, right? Or the cell. Okay. It shows his amazingness.
Right. Dude, that's amazing. Okay. When do you get the Australia one up and running?
That one should, I bet you it'll be done within 6 months. That's my hope.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. One of these days, after you get a bunch of these up and running, come on and just go over a lot of the photos. Do you guys do videos too?
I am going to do a video of Jupiter rotating.
Oh, cool. I was going to ask you about that.
Because when you do planets or you do lunar stuff, what you do is the cameras are so amazing that they'll shoot 100 frames a second. Well, so what you do is you just take a video of the planet, and as you know, the atmosphere is always fluctuating humidity depending on that's why they put telescopes high on mountains, because there's less atmosphere between them, and so there's less perturbations of the air and everything else, less heat. The best thing is really, really high, really, really cold. And so there's less water vapor. And that just we see it on the roads, right? When it's hot in the summer, we see the roads like that. We see that in the sky too. And that's important, because when we talk about water, where's the water? What is the water that is been divided in the book of Genesis?
Good call. All right. Let's do it. Well, before we do it, you guys want to go to the bathroom?